one thing that little bit that I really liked in your book, and you were citing someone else, I believe, describing composers basically writing a gloss on chant, and kind of by analogy with the gloss that someone might write on scripture, that a scholastic, writer might write on scripture, or on, the law books of Gratian, or, Boethius, or whatever was a classic in the Middle Ages.
Yep.
And I like that because it kind of just shows up the beautiful unity, the sort of like cosmic unity of the Middle Ages. That gloss approach is kind of like there everywhere you look, almost, even in their vision of the cosmos, but my question is, I'm not a big fan of serialism. One thing with serialism is it imposes an order on the music, but I don't think of it as a musical order. It is an order that is kind of just imposed, and you don't necessarily hear it in a musical way. My question about these cantus firmus lines from chant, where you, specifically in the cases where you slow it down so much, is it something that your ear actually responds to, even on a subconscious level, or is it really more of an organizational device or a rhetorical device for the composer?
Well, first of all, that idea of a gloss on a text, that is something I borrowed from somewhere else. It's too good an idea for me to have come up with myself. But yeah, this idea of chant as a sort of deep structure, I don't think you necessarily have to hear it. I mean, obviously, there's the fact that if there's a piece of music for Palm Sunday, for example, it has a piece of chant at its base, that it's the right music for the day. It's good to have that there. But I think on an audible level, it's not always necessary to be able to perceive the chant melody. It's almost like the foundation of a building, I think, or some sort of deep structure. You don't need to see the foundation. You don't need to see these sort of inner supporting beams, but they're there. They hold up the building. In some ways, they create the form of the building, and they create a sort of vehicle for all this elaboration, the sort of gloss in a audible sense.
Right.
When I listen to chant-based music, I don't torture myself trying to hear that melody in there. It's enough to know it's there, or even not to know it's there, and just to enjoy the detail around it.
I guess I'm just sort of interested in kind of what kind of structure does this give to a piece. So as a jazz musician, a lot of our standard structures are these repeating, relatively short, maybe 32 bar, a lot of the time, chord structures it repeats, and that's what kind of gives it a structure that works on a musical level that isn't kind of, I don't want to say arbitrary, but I guess I'm wondering, like, what is it about the shape of a plain chant line that would lend a musical structure to the piece, rather than just like a decision that the composer makes, this is how I'm going to organize it, but it doesn't necessarily like affect the trajectory or the kind of the journey of the piece. I don't know. It's hard to explain in a perceptible way. I'm not saying that you need to be able to hear the line so much as that, like, choosing one chant rather than another chant. I don't know. That might not be a good question, but I'm still just trying to figure out exactly what the structural effect of these choices are.
Well, virtually all of the chant-based music that was being written in the early 16th century was written for a particular day, a particular occasion. You had this particular chant that was sung at Vespers on Candlemas or whatever, and okay, so I'm going to set that for that day. It wasn't a matter of saying, oh gosh, I'm going to thumb through my chant book until I find something that inspires me. Now, as far as the structure of the melody goes, it's not really the same as chord changes in jazz, because, well, first of all, those tend to be in nice binary numbers like 16, 32, 8,
Right. Well, that's kind of part of the question, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, it's and even in the Renaissance, even dance music, dance forms like secular instrumental stuff, those tended to be 8, 16, 32. In fact, those forms, they're kind of the same forms you get in jazz. They're definitely cousins.
Right.
They came from the same place.
Hmm.
But with chant melodies, one important thing that they give you is what you could call a center of tonality, a mode, a key, if you want. I have no problem saying things in the 16th century were in keys. I know that's kind of heresy, but it gives you a set of pitches that the voices can move around in, and a specific note that they can come to rest around, a sort of goal, a point of repose at the end. They give you something to work toward. And because these chant melodies, they're not just sort of directionless, as if I were to pick 12 pitches out of a hat or 32 or whatever. They have their own melodic integrity. They start somewhere, they go on this journey, and then they resolve. And they resolve in a particular place, a particular way. And if you're writing other voices around them as this sort of commentary, this sort of elaboration or gloss, they're going to resolve there too. And it gives you a goal, because you already know where you're going to end up. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful to? It must be so hard. I don't compose myself. It must be so hard to have to compose these big pieces, but to always know where you're going to end up. That must be quite reassuring. And I'm sure that helped some Renaissance composers be as productive as they were. Because when you've got a piece of chant, you've got this sort of lifeline. You don't know what's going to happen along the way,
Right.
but you know where you're going to end.